put Camryn on the hot seat. Here we go.
Yeah, Camryn, we're gonna hit you with these hard pressing questions. What's your
Thanks a lot for this,
favorite?
guys. You know how much I love the spotlight, so thanks.
All right, here's the first hard pressing question. What's your favorite food place if we're shooting a hockey event, north of the 401?
Wow. Well, you know what? I just watched Max's, so I'm gonna have to go with California sandwiches. I I have to echo what he says. Honestly, like I just think when Max was telling that story about California sandwiches, I thought about the first time that I met you and him, Will and him, and it was just like it was a game that we were shooting. It wasn't the first time we met, but the first time we like hung out, and it was in Max's car, and we went to like Souvlaki or something, and I was just like, who are these guys? Like they just go and go and go, like ripping on each other. I was like, there's no way. Like how have I missed these guys? Like you guys were just so funny.
Well, the knock I get all the time is like, Will, like you just showed up out of nowhere, like third year. Like I don't know if you knew who I was earlier.
Well, I had no idea.
No one did. No one
really knew.
Let's be completely honest.
Everyone knows Max, loudest guy in the room.
Yeah.
I didn't really know Max either, to be honest.
Really?
I don't know how. I missed him. I think I met Max when he was like producing one of our like broadcasts. I don't know. He was the producer and I was doing content creation or something. And I just remember like I'd never had a producer like him ever. Like he was calling me all the time, like checking. And I was literally like working on it like the night before. And he's like, yeah, like, what do you think? Like, do you need help? And I was like, I've never had a call from a producer before. Like I didn't know like we're taking it seriously, but
well, yeah. So I mean, you hardly know us, and we're just going at each other. Like I'm kind of a quiet guy in class. But when was this? Was this like April in like 2019 when like, we're shooting 20 More Miles and whatnot?
It was before 20 More Miles because that's how I like started to know you guys. And then that doc class came around and I was like, okay, I have to work with Isabel. Like I haven't worked with her in these like 3 years I've been here. And she was my best friend. And I was like, okay, I have to work with her. And then she's like, who do we work with? And I was like, I know the guys. Like these guys, we got to work with them. They're so fun. They're so good. So it was before that class that I did that shoot with you guys for the GTHL.
Right. Yeah. Maybe when like we Max and I like spent probably, there was one period of time we spent 60 days straight together, like no days away. I think we drove each other.
That sounds like a nightmare.
Into insanity. Like because we went to like Kitchener, we were going to like hockey practices out in like Weston Road. Like it was like every single day driving, talking. I think I drove this guy up the wall and he did the same to me. So that's probably why we were pissed at each other. But yeah, Camryn, like why don't we go into like how did you like get started becoming like a freelance videographer, going to Ryerson, now you're at CBC as a video editor. Like I only have known you for the last couple of years, but what was like the inception? When did you realize you're like, all right, I want to do video?
It was grade 6.
Oh my God. That was young. I thought I was young.
Literally grade 6. I was in elementary school and my sister and would always do these like videos for her class projects. And I was just like the little sister rat, like running around watching. And I was like, oh my God, like I want to do that. That's so fun. So then when like my class projects came around, like I was always the video person. Like my parents bought me like a Canon T3i or something. And it was the best thing. Like we would just shoot video on it for all of our projects. And then my sister ended up going to St. Roch, which is a high school in Brampton, for media. And I was like, I'm obviously going. Like, there's no way I'm not going. So I applied and got in. And that whole 4 years was just like basically just a dumbed down version of Ryerson. It was like broadcast, it was videos, it was like photography as well, but it was like a lot of video. And I just kind of like loved documentary, like I always have, because of like our 4th year project was to do a documentary of whatever we wanted. And I had not like thought of a concept yet. And it was pitch day and I still didn't have a concept. And all I had going for me was that I knew Tyler Seguin's sister. So I was like, I'm just going to do it on Tyler Seguin's mom. Like, why not? So I just pitched it because I had nothing else to say. And then we ended up doing it. And Isabel was on my team for that. And it was just like the best process. Like I loved shooting it. I loved editing it. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to go into film, like for sure. Like my sister had done it. I'm just following her as always. And then I went to the university fair, and I had made my way over to the film section. I was just going to talk to Ryerson about film. And then I saw this like RTA booth, and like in it was Sarah Jenkins. And I was like, why don't I just
alum.
And then it was, she was in the sport media booth, and like I had just talked to media production, and I was like, sport media, like that sounds so cool. So I went and I talked to her, and like, Sarah Jenkins, like she pitched it to me so well, and I was like, oh my God, like the perfect program. And then so I applied to both. I didn't even end up applying to film because I was like, RTA, that's it. And then I got into media production first, and I really wanted sports media, and I wasn't getting in, and I was so worried. And then like a couple days later, I got into sports media, and I was like, this is the one. Like it just like combined my love of sport and like filming and broadcast and everything, and I loved it. And then that's how I ended up there.
Exactly.
So just so it's on the record, you're saying that it's easier to get into media production than sport media.
Confirmed.
Okay.
That's
now we
weird.
know.
I applied twice to sport
And didn't
media
get
and media
into
production.
either?
Well, didn't get into either the first time round. The second time, I only got
You were
into
in new
sport.
media, weren't you?
No, I didn't apply to that. No, I don't even know what that means.
Okay, funny new media story. So I'm from Thunder Bay. Obviously, it's 12 hours away from Toronto. And I decide in grade 12, my first semester, that I wanted to apply to sport media. So mom's like, awesome, let's go down and see one of those seminars or whatever they call them. We're going to walk you through the program. Great. So we jump on a flight. We go to Toronto. And we don't know where this conference room is, so we lose ourselves in the RCC. We don't know anything. Eventually, we walk in, and there's like this crazy like projection thing going on, and the professor kind of takes the podium or whatever, and he's like, so welcome to our new media showcase. These are some of the finest students that we have in the program. And I just remember looking at my mom. We had flown like 2 hours to get here. It was like a red-eye flight, so I was absolutely exhausted, and I was like, we're not staying for this. This is brutal. But I made it. Eventually I get accepted, so I mean, it all works out.
I mean, there you go. A little waste of a couple $100.
Yeah.
What'd you do after that? Where'd you head? Did you just fly straight home?
No, we have family in Toronto, so we did a bunch of stuff that day.
True.
Wasn't a waste.
Well, anyways, sport media, great program. We all graduated from it, but it was like second year when we met, and then I think that was when you started getting into freelance video. So like, I know for myself going into sport media, I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was like, let's just see where this takes me. I think I want to do some sort of film stuff. And then I found freelance. I realized like that's I think what I want to do. Like, did you expect at all to be like on your own, just doing videos like with friends, your sister, weddings, all this stuff? Like, when did you realize like this is actually like a legit?
No, like I thought like just growing up, I think like you're going to get a 9 to 5 and like, that's going to be it. You're going to be full-time, you're set with benefits, whenever. And it's like finding that in our industry is so hard, especially for like video. But it's really like, it's the dream, like working freelance, especially like working with like people like you guys and like working with your friends is like, what else could you ask for? Like, it's so fun. But no, I think my first sense of freelancing, even though it wasn't really freelancing, was doing wedding videos with my sister. She just kind of brought me on because like she needed another camera and I knew how to shoot. So we started doing that, and like watching that first video that we made was like, it was just awful. Like I couldn't even really point and shoot. Like it was awful. I had a horrible camera. And then like to what we can make now is like crazy. Like we've gotten so much better in the short time that we've been doing it. But then I think the next thing I had was working for the National Ballet School. And that just like kind of got thrown on me. I think Sykes randomly said to me one day, he was like, would you ever want to shoot ballet? I was like, what? I was like, pardon? Like what? And he was like, our old TA, like Leandra, he was like, she does this thing at the National Ballet School. Like, I don't know much about it, but she's looking for shooters. And I was like, yeah, like sign me up. Like I'd be down, but like I've never shot ballet. I had no idea what it meant. So I was like, I'd be down to try. But then I kind of started doing it, and it was so much fun at the beginning, and it still is. Like, I'm still doing it. And what I like about that role is like, it's not just one thing. Like, I'm not just editing the same thing over and over again. Like, sometimes I'm shooting auditions, sometimes I'm shooting a class. Like, it's very diverse, which is really nice. But yeah, that's my taste of freelance and how it started up.
And then the pandemic hit, and there is really none of that left, which sucks because I was looking forward to that OHL Cup
Oh
this
my
year. How
god.
fun. I mean, it wouldn't be the same level as the one prior. Like
Yeah.
that game prior when we were shooting our documentary, which was called 20 More Miles for, I think, third year documentary class. And
Okay.
it was just following like this really good hockey team, and they made it to the OHL Cup final. And it was like this back and forth, like comeback game, and then went to overtime. And I remember being in that rink, and like, I don't know about you, but I was like getting chills, like how loud it got. It was like a roar of like a concert in that
It was
overtime.
insane. Like, that game, running between, like, I don't know how you and I got all those goals. Like, I I don't even remember shooting. Like, I was so fired up that whole game, and the hits were huge. Like, it was such an
Unbelievable.
exciting game. I can't believe it.
It's like those moments that make like the freelancing thing so worth it, because sometimes again you get down on yourself. Sometimes you're like, it's a bit lonely at times, like you work with friends, but sometimes you're like editing all day and you're kind of like alone, and there's no like office environment. But then when you have these like highs, especially with the friends, it just makes it like all worth it. And like with Max too, like his stories are just incredible, just as like a team guy. Like it's just a person I want to work with, like I know forever for sure on hockey.
Literally. And remember when we were running out on the ice, like, once they won, and we got all those shots of them, like, celebrating? Oh my god, like,
I
I felt
know.
like I was literally part of the team, even though I was literally there only a couple of games. I
I
was like,
know we
"Wow."
were following them for a while, and like you kind of feel part of the team, but then I'm also like, I don't want to appear like I'm part of the team too much, because then
I
it's kind of
know.
like greasy. Like you're this like 20-year-old, 21-year-old with like 15-year-olds celebrating. Anyways, I digress. But you were a freelancer, and then now like you're working at CBC, so like that's like just night and day difference of like creative process. Like what do you think you prefer?
I prefer having both. Like, I'm only part-time at CBC right now, so it's kind of nice that I can do both. And like, that's kind of what I always wanted to do. Like, I didn't want to have something like all the time, because then you get sick of it and you get burnout. But I think what's nice about CBC right now is I'm just starting there, and then I can already see like there's so much potential to grow and like different roles to do, which is so nice. Like, I remember when I started my internship at Sportsnet, like, my first day I came back and I told Sarah, I was like, "Oh my god, like, is this gonna be my life? Like, I don't want this to be my life." All my shifts ended at like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. Like, I was getting home and I was like, Sarah was sleeping, all my friends had just got home from the club. Like, it was awful. And like, yes, the work was fun, and I was learning a lot, but I just didn't want that to be my life. And now at CBC, it's like, it's actually 9 to 5, and it's like really like sustainable. And like, I'm not exhausted when I get home. Like, it's so nice. So I think having both is like my ideal, because I do really value like the 9 to 5 life, but also like nights and weekends, like, obviously I know I'm going to have to work them. And like, a lot of the other stuff I'm doing is nights and weekends. So having a balance of both is like, I think what I'm finding that I'm going to end up doing and what I like doing.
Do you ever see yourself moving full time into freelance? You say you like both, but like do you think, I think we talked about it in the past, like you're like you want to own your own production company. Like what does that look like in the future for you?
Yeah, I did tell you that when I think I told
Yeah.
you that. And
Because your
I
sister has like a similar aspiration. You guys are like minded, both hardworking.
yeah, I think that was like, that's definitely the dream, is to like work for yourself. And I know there's like a you can do that when you're freelancing, but I think what I've always, and my sister as well, what we always wanted to start is like our own thing, like working for ourselves, doing videos we love, like, and not the same thing all day. Like, I think we thought of that like when we first started going to Ryerson. We were like, how cool would it be if we started our own production company? Like, she's in documentary right now, and she worked for a production company. And I think both of us were kind of like, okay, to actually be able to do something like this, you have to get your feet in there and like understand the industry first. So I think that's our, like, in the back of our head, like that's always what we would want to do. But obviously I don't know enough and I'm not good enough to do that yet. So I think obviously I have to learn so much, and that's what I'm doing right now, is learning from the places I've worked and the people I work with. So, but yeah, like that, like tell me that wouldn't be the best thing ever. Like just working on videos
The
that you
best.
pitch, like doing docs you love. Like I think that's like my end goal for sure.
Well, we were slowly getting there. Like I just remember like the work starting to ramp up. Like I got that job offer. We were gonna go. I was gonna bring you on. I don't know if I told you about this, but there was like a couple draft picks at the NHL who had this like agent who knew this like marketing girl named Fiona Birch, and she's like, I want to bring you on. It was like looking like we're gonna do this mini doc series, go to Montreal for the draft. Like we were getting there, and then COVID kind of just stomped all of it. But I honestly, I think it could happen in the future. It's such a slow process. Like it's not this like overnight thing, because Mose and I talk about this a lot, is like when you're a freelancer and a creative, it's about balancing the creative work and like building that craft, but also the business, right?
Mhm.
It's like, and you and I have talked, Camryn, about this. It's like, how do you like price yourself? How do you position yourself as like a creative to not just make the best work, but also like get paid properly and fairly, so you're not like scaring away clients. So like, I mean, that's a struggle I've been dealing with for a while, but I think I'm in a decent place. Like, how often do you think about that with your sister, like doing weddings and stuff? Because it's sometimes
It's
hard to charge a lot of money.
it's so hard. And I remember I called you a couple months ago and I was like, Will, give me the rundown. How do you price? What are the numbers? Like, how do I do this? Because I find myself always getting caught up in this situation that's just not good for me as a business person, because like a lot of the freelance things I'll do, like I'm working with this company doing like some like videos for them, and like it's so hard to like price properly and then like still like have them as your like friend. Like it's a messy situation to get yourself in, because you know that you're worth more, but you don't want their business to be like shattered by your pricing. And especially for small businesses, it's so hard to like get yourself caught in that. But it's something I'm still trying to navigate, because I want to be fair to myself, and I know like I deserve more than I ask for. But it sucks when you're working with people or working for people that like you consider friends, because you want to be nice and you want to keep working with them, but you're like, I deserve to be valued, you know? So I find myself getting in that situation quite often, to be honest.
Like, it's hard to be a stone cold business person. Like,
Mhm,
it's like wearing a different mask. Like, as a business person, you're kind of like robotic,
mhm.
RoboCop, like Mose likes to call me, just emotionless statue. And then you like take that mask off, put it away, and then put on the like, okay, like how was your day? Because you also have to like build a relationship with these clients.
Mhm.
That's a hard thing to balance. And,
Oh my,
I mean,
yeah.
like I'm working with Mose on some graphic stuff between a friend, and like I think he's had some, issues trying to get the right like budget right down for like that project.
I mean, it's tough. I think one of the other tensions that I think about a lot is that so much more business is happening online. And for so many people, they're like, I want to start this like mask business, or I want to start a clothing line. But like the jump that everyone kind of runs into is that like they don't want their personal social media to be like their business social media. So I think it's tough sometimes for people to make that jump.
Oh, like Camryn, this reminds me of you. Like you had Cam's Creative. You're posting on there a bunch. So you haven't posted in a while, but
I
you
know.
were. But you were posting there, and you wanted to separate your personal brand to your like creative brand. I decided to do the opposite. I like mixing the two. Like, why do you think it's best for your case to mix, or sorry, to split them up?
Yeah, honestly, I think it was because I first started Cam's Creative because I was starting to put too many videos on my personal, and I think that you're right. Like if you want to do the same, it's fine, and like that's who you are, so show that. But I find that like I just wanted to separate it, because I didn't want my whole personal feed to be videos, 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 because first of all, I barely post pictures. So my whole feed would just be like videos. And then like, I find that separating would just like not make me worry about that. Like, you know, I'm kind of a stickler of like, I don't want to post like 4 videos in a row and like feel weird about it on my personal. Like I want to post a picture. Like I don't want to think about that. So I just want to like do it on a separate channel, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But
Like,
yeah, you're right. I should be posting on there more.
yeah. I mean, not nowadays, not that important, I guess. But even Juan did the same thing. A mutual friend of ours from Ryerson, like he made a separate account, and now he's like constantly, or now he's just stopped that, and now he just posts it just on his personal, and he's like mixing his personal with his business. And I almost think it makes sense to do that because you're, as a videographer, you're not just like a person, you're not just like creating content in like this like faceless figure. It's like a lot of the business is just being someone you can hang out with, like the person you're filming or the thing you're filming. It's like you're not just selling your camera, you're selling yourself. So it makes sense to have your personal integrated with your business. But then again, it's like, do you want to bombard your friends and family, your grandma, with like all these videos? They're like, I don't really care about this wedding event or whatever it is.
Yeah, I kind of gave people the option to be like, if you care about this, okay, then follow this one. But if you don't, like, just don't follow it. You don't have to
Exactly.
like it. But yeah, you're right. It's part of who I am. So I know it's honestly smart, like to keep it as one, because it's so much of your identity. But yeah, to each their own.
Yeah, totally. So we worked on a doc that recently, got promoted publicly until December 7th. Is it even, what day is it right now? Oh my God, it's the last day. Anyways, the Dream Gap tour. Do you want to maybe break down, like I want to get into like us editing that and shoot. I mean, you edited the majority of it.
Us?
Hey, I helped. Camryn.
All of us.
I helped.
You did help. You did. Especially at the end there. Oh my God.
This is why Will wanted to bring you on. He just wanted proof because some people have been saying that he spent a lot of time in October, September, and November not working on that project. But kind of working on that project.
He was in there all the time.
He was
shooting a lot.
I was driving. I was
and
putting
then
in diesel.
the editing suite came around and it was hide and go seek with you.
Okay, Camryn.
No, it wasn't your job though.
That is facts.
And you were there at the end when I needed you there, which was color correcting and the finalizing and the stabilizing and all the shite that I hate.
The details. This guy's a details guy. If I can give Will one compliment, he is the best details guy that I know.
Yeah. And I can't get
to a fault.
All right, it's the roast show of Will. But anyways, we did this doc. I wanted to give a little breakdown of, you know, what this doc like meant to you and what it's about, because I think this was like a really special like documentary for you, and so special to the point where you had, I think, Sportsnet offering you an editing job you turned down, and then you turned down working like on and off with that ballet, the National Ballet Club. What's it called? Team.
Canada's National Ballet School. It's very
school. But you turned that down. Club. Anyways, you turned all that stuff down just to work on this documentary. Like you're turning down money and, you know, furthering your career. So I think this is pretty special to you. What it meant.
It was like everything at the time, and honestly, it still is. Like I'm so proud of how that turned out, and it happened at such a weird time where. Yeah, like I was doing that interview with Sportsnet and they're like, we could start you as a job now if you want to come on and you can do it. And I said, I can't do it. Like I have something else right now that I need to do. So I had to push it off. But honestly, like it was the best decision, like doing that documentary and like completely like engulfing myself in it was like amazing, because that final product was just something that like, I think all of us were so proud of. But just to like be there at the premiere, and I think I was sitting beside you, Will, and we like when people were clapping for us, it was just like, what? It was like all these people are here for something that we made, and look how good it is. It was just so overwhelming. Like,
it was, yeah. I mean, I was almost tearing up at one point watching it because I'm like, dude, I was like dying editing this with you sometimes. Like, I mean. I think I was on campus one day for 12 hours editing, working on that with you. And then it was like midnight in your apartment. And I'm like putting on the neat video, trying to like denoise things because we just brutalized some of that footage.
Oh my God.
And I remember like my brain feeling like it was rotten, like it was rotten. Like I couldn't like think straight. I was so tired, but like I don't look at that like a negative memory. Like it was kind of like this like crazy journey. So to see it finished on camera or on not camera on the silver screen, it was like, I don't know. I just got chills. I was
Yeah.
like, how much work did we put into this? And then now it's here. It's like crazy just to think.
It was way too overwhelming that moment, because honestly, I think the way that we did things, I think when we started with our concept in that meeting room that we met to the end, like our story concept completely changed. When we started, we had no idea what it was going to be about. We had no story arc, nothing. We
Well,
kind
before
of
we
shot
go
it.
in, sorry to interrupt you. Why don't we just explain what the doc was about? Because I feel like we haven't done that yet.
The documentary, The Dream Gap, is about the climate of women's hockey, women's professional hockey, and we shot it with our main characters, Jana Hefford, Hilary Knight, Marie-Philippe Poulin, Liz Knox, and it kind of talked about the reality of women's hockey and how most of these athletes were working full-time jobs while playing hockey, and just the vast difference between the female hockey world and the male hockey world. And actually, when we first thought of this idea, Ailish and I, we were thinking like, oh, it's going to be about the CWHL, like when that was around. And then right before our practicum came up, the CWHL folded. So this project kind of became around like the new Players Association, which formed after the fold, and which still exists today. So that's what it's about.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
And then our idea changed, like you were saying in like our first meeting. Like what was well, that's the thing about any creative process. Like the beginning, like, you have this idea, you're super excited about it, but the hardest part is like getting pen to paper, getting footage into that editing sequence and making it. So like, what was that? Because you directed and edited this and pretty much wrote with Ailish this whole doc. So like, what was like that beginning process like?
I think the beginning was a lot of like, I think that whole summer I was trying to figure out what the heck is this about. And as much as like there's so much going on and like there is a story here, it's like, what is it and who tells it? Who tells the story? Who's important? Whatever. And I think the hardest part for Ailish and I at the very beginning was like we would have these meetings and then it was like, okay, but what's the end? Like what's the climax? Like what is it? And we didn't have that. Like even going into shooting, we had a list of questions, but we didn't have a story arc. Like we kind of knew we were just wanted to tell the story how it is. But how do you do that? Like how do you write down a story like before you shoot it, because you have no idea what's going to happen. So I think, and I was talking to my sister about this, and like I was like, how do people go into documentary with a story arc? And then my sister, she was saying how like a lot of these like documentary directors just kind of run off of their reputation. And like one of the directors at her production company, he just gets funding based off of his name. Like TVO will be like, I want another Alan Zweig documentary. And then they just fund it and he goes and shoots it and then makes the story in the edit suite. And I feel like that's a lot of what we did. Like
100%.
a lot of our story arc was kind of made in the edit suite. It's kind of the same thing with 20 More Miles. Like we made it on the timeline, and then our story kind of made its way like through like revisions and changing the interviews. But yeah, that was the most difficult part, I think, for all of us, because we were like, what the heck is this about? And like, who's telling it? But we figured it out.
It's really stressful because like, I mean, if you think of like a film perspective, it's, you know, you have your script, you know what your story, you know your character motivations, like you know where what your themes are, where you're headed. But the challenge with a documentary is like you don't know how things are going to change, how the answers are going to come out of the like talent's voices. So you're really like in the editing suite just praying you got everything. And that's where like voiceover comes in and graphics, which we had Mose help with the doc. But we were like, we don't want to do voiceover. But I think that was almost like a crutch we should have taken.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. We had this idea in our head that like voiceover is just like a last resort scapegoat kind of thing. And I think like it works a lot of the time, but I think we were lucky though. We were able to tell it a lot through just interviews. And I think that's like, that kind of goes to show like how well we did with our interviews. I think Ailish did a really good job at getting these girls to talk. So it worked out in the end, but did we have like a set in stone process? I don't think we had that at the beginning.
Nope. Well, I kind of look at the documentary space, and like we've done 2 big ones. They take like, I think we spent like 100 hours on each. Like, it's crazy, and they're only 20 minutes. So I can't imagine what these like award-winning hour-and-a-half docs take. And it's only the 4 of us or 3 of us. And I remember when we were looking, like we were editing ours, and then we were like stressing out, freaking out, and then we like looked at trailers, or like rather not trailers, but other docs, and in the credits, it's like, whoa, 150 people worked on this doc. So it's also like trying to, you know, get some perspective and like take a step back and not get too stressed, because it is just a 4-person team. Like, we shouldn't be like holding ourselves at this crazy standard, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And that would affect our like mental well-being while editing. Like, I remember you were like, you had some tough days where you were like, you know, maybe a tear was shed in that editing suite.
I won't deny that a tear was shed. It's overwhelming. And also, I think the environment of those editing suites is just like, it's not good. Like, the amount of nights I've spent in there just like wondering if I'm gonna make it through the night is like not healthy. Like, that, how we did that, and like the fact that we did make 2 20-minute documentaries is really mind-blowing with like the team that we had. We really had very minimal resources, 0 budget, and we made that. Like, that's actually very impressive, and I'm really proud of us.
It's like, in that process, you can't, like, I feel like what ruins creatives, burns them out, it makes their work not as good, as like they just hold themselves at these expectations. Like, I remember you were like, really like this story. It like meant so much to you as like a female hockey player yourself when you were growing up. Like, it meant a lot to you and you wanted to nail it, but you're almost like thinking too big picture, too like comparing yourself to other docs, that maybe it weighed on your mental, where maybe you could have been working faster, made a better product if you didn't think like that. You were just thinking about, this is going to be great with what we have.
Absolutely. Like, I feel like that whole project, there was so much weighing on us because Ailish was a part of this players association. Like, it wasn't just like, we're a documentary production company making this film, and hopefully it turns out well. It's like, we are the PWHAPA. Like, we're telling this story, and it's like our story. Like, there was a lot of pressure to tell it the right way. And even now, like, Ailish still got that email a couple days ago saying like, why did you include this girl in this story when it should have been like a young female athlete who plays on a female team? It's like, we didn't do everything right. Like, we still like had our like mess ups, but I think the pressure on us was crazy, to be honest. And because we had so much contact with the PWHAPA, and the story was happening as we were shooting, it was like, there was an insane amount of pressure.
And like, you're in the suite alone sometimes, and like, it's just mentally, it can be just the hardest part. But sorry, go for it.
I was just gonna say, like, remember how many times we were like, no, it's not only about what the story is saying, but we were like, this is all interview. We need a breakup. Like, how do we find a break?
I was about to say, if we were to get technical here, which I think would be good, like when I'm looking at a doc, when I first was starting, I'm like, it's just interviews and like B-roll and stuff. But I realized like the storytelling elements that are necessary are interviews, voiceover, text on screen, B-roll sequence where it's like that Liz Knox like mic'd up walking around showing us, graphics like what Mose made. All that combined is like a visual storytelling, and visual storytelling elements that are necessary. And I think we were like really reliant on interviews, and we brought Mose in to help with the graphics. So like, Mose, I want to ask you, like, you made that graphic, it was great. Do you think a documentary should have like a ton of graphics? Like, is that an essential piece to storytelling? Like, non-video elements that are, you know, text, their images, animating.
I mean, like, it depends on the context, right? Like, if your whole thing is just interviews or your whole thing is B-roll, I think at the end of the day, the question is really like contrast. So if you are very interview heavy, or you are like very B-roll heavy, like, think about what you can do to break that up, I think the best example is that if your whole song, like if you're making a song and your whole song was loud, it's not loud, right? It's just kind of like noisy because there's no contrast to like split that up. So I think that graphics are probably the last thing that video people think of when they do a doc. So it's like interesting. I think Netflix has certainly helped because I think the level of some of the shows coming off Netflix, especially like the originals, is just crazy.
Well, Mose, if I were to interject here, like I don't think it's the last thing we think about. I think it's one of the first things that we put down underneath our carpet and don't touch because we're terrible and terrified of doing it.
And I think the graphics people are the same way. Like there's so much interesting things where I'm like, oh, this would be awesome if there was like video underneath this. But it's like the graphics people just want to do graphics and the video people just want to do video, and then the end product suffers because you can't like open up your mind to other things, or the other things intimidate you and you're like, I don't want to do graphics or I don't want to do video. But I find like that, like we talk about Gibson Hazard all the time and he's amazing because he like his work really blends everything. It blends animation, it blends photography, it blends videography, and you get this thing where you're looking at it and you're not really sure what you're looking at, which I think is like, that's the most magical thing that you can do as like a creative person. It's like show somebody something that they weren't expecting. Like whatever you do, I think that's when you get great work.
And what's great about the graphics, I think what our doc was missing at times was there's things we wanted to mention in the story that weren't answered in interviews. And the way that we can bring them up is like through some sort of graphic element. For example, like if we want to compare women's sports to men's sports, like doing an animated timeline of like when the NHL started versus when the CWHL or NWHL started, or not is it NWHL? Yeah. Like seeing a visual representation of like how long they've been going in a timeline and then like what their revenue is per year. And it just provides context that maybe isn't there in the interview and is better formatted than doing a voiceover of like someone just saying, oh, they started in 1919 and they've made this much over 100 years, you know?
And I think we had like a list of like 5 graphics that we wanted Mose to do. And I think it would have been so valuable if we didn't start that at the very end. But it's like you're watching our documentary before we put the graphics in. And it's like you kind of get to that threshold where it's like, this is too much interviews. It feels like, no, and there's no like pause.
Yeah.
And we felt that when we were watching it. And I think that we knew we needed some of that. And that's why we shot that firehouse scene with Liz. But you're right. Like you need those elements of something else. And when you're watching graphics, you don't have to listen to, Hillary Knight talking. You can just watch the graphic and understand, So I think if we were able to incorporate more of those, it would have been even better. But it's just the timing of when we started. Like that was just, you're right. It was an afterthought. And I think we realized that much too late.
Yeah, I didn't think we realized like how important different elements on a documentary would be, like for visual storytelling. We just kind of got so focused on interviews and like making pretty shots, but it's like, how can you incorporate the different elements? It would have been good to have Mose on our goddamn team, but he went to binge and
How did that happen?
The rest is history. I don't know. I mean, maybe he didn't reply to his call. I can't remember.
It happened. That meeting that we had right before we got Sarah and the team. And we were talking about like, who the heck are we going to bring on? And I think you and Max were like, Mose. And then I was talking about like, we need someone who does graphics. Like we need that for this documentary. Yeah. And then English was like, have you heard of Canva? And I was like, oh. No. I was like, no. And then our entire social just went on Canva. And it worked. It wasn't our, it wasn't great, but you know what? That's not our focus anyways. So
No. I'm excited to see in the future, like the next doc we do. Like I just want to do something new. Like there's something about like a long-term project like that, which like it's so exciting and rewarding at the end of it. But this is something we talked about on previous, like we talked about with Ailish in the last episode. It's like, okay, we like these long-form storytelling. We like the docs. They're interesting, but like content is kind of moving into a shorter form space. Have you been thinking at all about like, maybe making more digital content that's a lot shorter form, like minute-long features about like athletes? Like how do you see like this landscape like changing and how you're going to adapt to it?
You're right. It is getting a lot shorter. And I think what's nice about that is it's more digestible. When you're watching a documentary, like you have to be sitting there for an hour, 2 hours and digesting this content. A lot of these stories can just be told in a minute Instagram like video. And I think it's something valuable that you have to learn, because think about how hard it was for us to tell our story in 20 minutes.
We were
Like
stretching some stuff.
we had hours and hours and hours of footage, and we were like, okay, so now we'd say the same thing a couple times, like over and over again. Like we can't do that. And I think what's nice about short content is it's budget friendly. You can do it in a much shorter amount of time, and you can still get the same story across. Like I think it's really valuable. And with everyone's like, everyone can watch a video in 1 minute and then move on with their life. They don't have to sit down for an hour and digest this and then like, get the same story. So I think it's something that's really valuable. It's very hard to tell a story in 1 minute. I think it's like, writing an essay versus writing like a article online. Like you can get the same story across, but it's very hard to cut it down. What do you keep? What do you throw out? So it's a valuable lesson to learn, but it takes time to actually be able to perfect it.
Now, is this a conversation that happens at the network at like a CBC with like in the editing room and everything? Like, are they talking about like where attention's headed? Are longer form pieces more valuable? Is it better to do shorter stuff? Like I always think that networks are kind of slow, but what's going on your end?
In the short amount of time I've been there, I'm learning a lot because I have a way of doing things that isn't necessarily the way that they do things. And I've noticed this with a couple of pieces that I've done. Like I get like this whole chunk of footage and I have to make like a storyline out of it or whatever. And I make it, I work a couple hours on it. I think it's great. And then the producers watch it and they have such a different mindset. And it's like, this is what people are going to watch. This is what people want to actually hear. We can cut all of this. And I watch it and I'm like, how the heck did I not think of that? Like, that is so smart. Like, and that's something that I don't really have yet. I'm not really like able to like, it's kill the baby. Like I can't like do all this work and then just cut out half of it. But it's like, that's how it is. Like you don't want to include something that doesn't need to be there. And I think that's one of my, like the hardest things for me is kind of just like letting things go, like something, a whole like half of my video that I like covered with B-roll and, I made the camera switches and it's done. And then they're like, oh, I don't think we need that second half. It's like, but it's so true. Like I have to be able to get better at doing that, but it's really valuable to be able to cut down your work. And I think I'm learning that, which with each video that I make for them. So,
but with creatives, like I find like a trait many creatives have is like they're very like emotional and like you get emotionally attached to your work. But it's almost like in the space we're in or just in the entertainment space, it's like you can't be emotional, but then our nature is emotional. So it's like it's like trying to be like more stone cold with your content is like better. I know Mose making a lot of the graphics. I don't know if you've been seeing the carousels we post. It's like we have to know we have this vision of he has a vision of how to do it, but it's like what is necessary, what's more important, like what's our goal with this content, and like how do we get people to click through, follow us, listen to the pod.
Mm-hmm. It's something I'm still learning, and I did see those carousels. Those are very good, Mose. I really like your guys' content, and I do watch your podcasts. So yeah, I think being able to, you're right, like we are very emotional. And I find that what I'm thinking about isn't necessarily what the producers are thinking about. Like I just made this video the other day about Canada basketball and I was so caught up in the first minute where I was using all these effects and like it looked great and like the slow motion was perfect there. And then they're like, make an Instagram cut down and make it a minute. So I was like, oh, I'm going to use this. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to use this amazing piece that I made. And then all of a sudden they want this minute of talking. And I'm like, oh, but look how good this edit was. Like, oh, it was so good. But it's like, no, the story's here. And it's like, okay, yeah, you're right. I have to be able to make that distinction between like, yes, a piece is edited very good, but is the story there?
Mm-hmm. So I want to transition a little off like the work and more into like the school. Like we've had a bunch of Ryerson alum on and stuff, and it seems like there's a general consensus of like first 2 years you're figuring what you want to do, and then like those last two it's like a lot of work and like moving off of like the education side. So like what was like your like last 2 years of experience like at Ryerson?
I think in the final 2 years, I kind of realized that I can take away from this program whatever I want. And I started to focus on what I cared about. And in the final 2 years, there was that doc class and practicum. And I kind of took those classes and put everything into that. And the other classes kind of just like, okay, I'm here. Like we did on-air presentation and like that's my least favorite class because I hate being on air. And I just kind of like was there and did it and whatever. And like same with the liberals and the electives. Um, but I think also in those first 2 years, like those first 2 years, although they weren't the most like, productive in a class sense, I think I grew a lot because of like the volunteering I was doing. And I think there was so much pressure from, Joe and all the profs who were saying like, you have to do your creative practice hours, you have to do it, you have to do it. And I was like, that scared the shit out of me in first and second year. I was like, I have to do these creative practice hours. Like I have to get them done now. So I started and I volunteered on this like media production practicum, which was like amazing. I was like, what the heck? Like these guys are doing a full film in like Kerr Hall. I was like, this is crazy. So I think those first 2 years, although I wasn't like doing much, I was putting up posters for them or whatever. Like I got to watch them on set and I was learning so much and like seeing what do I want to do. And then even I volunteered on Sarah's practicum and like I was able to do some social videos for them. And like somehow she remembered me from there. And it's like those connections that I made volunteering in first year ended up paying off later. So it's like, I think those first 2 years, although I was kind of like, what are these courses? Do I belong here? What is this? I was like getting a lot out of it that I didn't really know like would pay off in the future.
Mm-hmm. And like I think a large conversation online too is like, do I go to film school? Do I go to media school? And like I'm kind of torn on it because it's like there's all this debt that you like accrue over time, spending on the education, but like, is it worth it? Is it worth it to go to these schools? I land on yes, just from the connection standpoint.
I agree with you. I think it's worth it simply because of the connections. Like I think about how hard it would be for any of us to get our foot in the door if we didn't go to Ryerson Sport Media. Like the people that we know are working in the industry. Like our profs worked in the industry, still work in the industry. All of the students, like such a small program. You're likely to know so many people at different networks. Like it's very, very valuable, I think. And it would be very difficult. I can't even imagine doing it if we didn't go here. And not only that, like I know everyone says like what the courses, what did I learn? What did I learn? I didn't even use this, but it's like some of the courses I took were like amazing. Like I learned so much, although I'm not going into broadcast, like I learned so much from our TV classes. And the other one what was it called? Grip TV. It was like
Grip and lighting.
Grip and
yeah,
lighting.
lighting and grip. Yeah.
That course was like so valuable. I knew no one in that class. Like I was literally just alone every class, just like writing notes, trying to learn because it was the most valuable class that I took at Ryerson. It was like, because when do we learn anything about lighting? We have that one like lecture about key lighting and that's like it. We don't really learn. We just kind of like, they throw you in there, you'll figure it out. And like, yes, that it does work, but like to actually it was a media production class to get someone to like teach you how to light a set, teach you how to light a scene, like outdoor, indoor, like it was so valuable. And I think Ryerson's really good for having electives like that. A lot of my favorite courses were the electives that I was able to choose later. Same with the switching class. Like, will I be a switcher? I don't know, but I could now. Like, I know how to do it. So, yeah.
Exactly. And like, I mean, we have a couple guys who go to school still listen. I think they listen to some of the podcasts. It's like, what kind of advice do you give these kids, like either going into graduation or in third year or whatever? It's like, I always say like, just try and find as much work outside, and like school's important, but it's like, if you want to be creative in the creative space, it's like, you kind of have to, you got to skip some classes and like work on what you're doing, and like Mo's laughing stuff because
You gotta skip some classes.
I didn't show up to some classes in the last couple of years because like I couldn't. It just wouldn't make sense. Like, what do you think that balance is like? Because I think that's a hard thing when we grow up thinking school is this way, we have to do this or that. It's unpopular to say skip class,
It's popular in our program, but I think you're right. Like, it's like you got to weigh your options. Like, do I go to this class or do I finish this project? And I think I was lucky because I lived basically on campus for all 4 years. I was able to just jump out the door and I was in class. But no, like, there's definitely a lot to get done. And I think even with just the course load, I think I put a lot into our program, probably a lot more than a lot of people, because I tried 150% at every class. And I know that probably wasn't your outlook, Will. You didn't put everything into your class. I can tell you
Confirmed.
that.
Hey, if I didn't do that, we wouldn't be doing so much with the GTHL. So I'll take the L's there to give everyone else dubs.
No. You worked hard, just not at some classes.
Name one. No, name three.
No, you were there every class.
Your entire fall semester, 2020, 2019.
All right.
But what I'm saying is, like, there is a lot to get done, and it's very hard to make every lecture. I don't think you need to go to every lecture. I'll be honest. Like, I didn't go to every lecture, but I was there for the important things. And I think even if you're not working outside of class, like, you can put 100% into like some of your TV shows. Like, I did that for sure with the freaking Are You the One? Like, I put everything into that and I was so happy with it. Like, you can get busy with even things that are in school. And I think it's so valuable. Like, for people that are in school right now, like, I would tell them, put everything into it to what you like. Like, I didn't like the law class, so I didn't put everything into that. I barely scraped by, but I really liked TV class. And when it came to those projects, I was putting everything into it and I got so much out of it. And I think it's true, like, you get out what you put in.
Going back to what you would tell people that are still in school, and you said that you loved lighting. So maybe beyond lighting, like, what are some of the technical classes and skills and some of, I guess, your favorite classes that deal with technical skills? And then maybe, like, what are some of the classes outside of lighting that you wish there would have been offered? Maybe that's documentary, maybe it's like pacing or editing, maybe earlier. Like, what did you love from Ryerson in terms of technical classes? And then if you could say that you missed one thing at school, what would that class be?
My favorite classes at Ryerson were key lighting and grip, whatever that was called. Technical production was probably tied for first. Withers taught that. And it was like, did you guys take that course? Technical production?
Was that the switcher course?
Switcher class, yeah.
No, I heard great things about it though, so that doesn't surprise me.
Oh my God, like, extremely valuable. Technical production. It was like everything, every single week was like just 3 hours of like gold coming out of Withers's mouth. Like, I was like taking so much out of that. And like, although I thought I knew a lot about like the technical aspect of production, I had no idea any of the stuff he was talking about. And I was learning so much. And all of it was valuable to me. And I think that course was like extremely valuable. Yes, it's a lot about switching, but like half of the semester is about other things and like cables and like all this stuff and camera work. And I really needed to learn that. So I think that course was up there. Editing, it was good. Did you guys take that course? Editing?
Yeah, I took that course.
You were in my class, right?
It was all right. Yeah, it was good. It was like using other people's footage that was weird. Like, me and Will talk about this all the time. There's nothing like harder than jumping in on a project that you have like no clue what's going on. Because it's almost harder to guess what people want than to like do your own thing. So that's what I was like, this class is kind of weird.
Yeah, and it wasn't the most advanced editing. I think if that was like offered in the first 2 years.
Yeah.
Like, it would have been nice to take that in the first years and then like have an advanced editing or something, because that course was like a lot about like, keyboard shortcuts and like, like basic multicam sequences and stuff. And I think it was valuable if you're learning to edit. And I think what I would have done differently is take that course in my first 2 years when I kind of needed it more. And then if there was an advanced editing, I don't think there is. There isn't, I don't think. That would have been extremely valuable because I think there are a lot of people in our program who like want to edit and do edit. So I think a more advanced version would have been nicer. I also really liked graphics. I'm not a graphics person, but sports graphics was fun because I didn't know what I was doing and I was learning.
Exactly. All right. Well, Camryn, thanks so much for coming on. Really appreciate it. Is there anything you want to plug on the podcast? Something new? I mean,
Plug?
maybe like maybe your the documentary or anything?
Yeah, guys, go check out my documentary if you have a couple hours. If this is out today, I don't think this will be out today. But yeah, go check out the Dream Gap documentary. The link will probably still be public, so
Yeah.
they can click it. But yeah, that's the plug.
All right, perfect. Thanks again, Camryn. This was awesome. Guys, if you want to follow our Instagram, social media, everything, it's at Render and Repeat Podcast. We're posting every day during the week. It's great stuff made by Mose and myself, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thanks, guys.
Ciao.